Dentside Depot. Today we're going to be fixing a problem that's all too common, leaky Ford valve covers, and I'm going to show you my special recipe of how I like to fix it. But before we do, what's our patient today? Well, it is the Jade Interceptor truck with a Ford 302 V8 engine in it, but this process is the same for all old Ford small and big block engines. This is a truck I built, me and my uncle built together in the summer of 2023. We put it together in 28 days from start to finish, and it is a really cool truck. It is Crown Vic swapped, and it rides really awesome, but it has one problem. It's leaking oil onto the headers. I probably should have done the valve cover gaskets at that point, but I was going really fast with this build and neglected to do that, but that's okay. It's an easy fix for today. I have it in for an oil change and spring cleaning and everything else. So I already have the driver's side off. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna get the passenger side off. Then I'm gonna show you how I clean everything up and prep these to go back on. So definitely stay tuned. You might not have seen it done this way before. A method that works really well for me. All right, so the first part's pretty darn basic, and I'm gonna do my best to not be in the way with the camera and to also keep the light set the best I can. But I'm getting the wires out of the way here, and this does have studs on the wires to hold them in place here. Just pulling those up and out of the way, and they are definitely way loose. Definitely shouldn't have neglected doing this when I had the engine out of the truck, but when you're going fast, you're going fast. That definitely wasn't the right way to do it. These appear to have little aftermarket extension pieces on them, or maybe they're the factory ones. I don't know, they're pretty nice.
This side isn't leaking as bad as the other side. The other side's leaking really bad. Oh, that one's on the floor. And our last one back there. Got lucky with that one. Kind of the first try. And I think that's all of them.
All right. And you know what? Before I pull this off, you can see there's a little bit of wintertime schmutz in there, so I'm going to grab the vacuum and just pull all that out first, because I don't want that dropping down into the engine. Looks like a little mousey might have made the intake its home over the winter time. So let's make a mouse homeless. You're evicted. Didn't pay his HOA fees either. Too bad. And the HOA fees on an aluminum intake are like $400 a month, so that mouse wasn't prepared for that. All right. Yeah, this side was still sealed up pretty good. That's why it wasn't leaking. There we go. Try to pull it straight off so I don't get any schmutz or cork down in the valves. Something really cool about this engine is you can see here it still has the sticker on from the place that serviced it since it was new in Feasterville, Pennsylvania. That's pretty unique. This truck is so original besides the Crown Vic swap that I did on it, which makes it really cool. So I have not looked at these valves yet at all. And all the lifters feel good. This engine's in great shape. It's never been apart as far as I know. It definitely, I definitely don't think the heads have been off of this engine. It does smoke. on cold starts, but it doesn't smoke while it's driving. So my assumption is the umbrella seals are bad, and that's another very common Ford problem. Whenever I do a full engine, I always upgrade it to Teflon, because that's definitely the way you want to do it. But mechanically, the motor's very strong, so we just deal with a little bit of smoke. Okay, next up, all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna scrape any residuals off of the top of the scraper, and then I'm gonna spray it down with brake clean and make sure there's no oil left on both sides. I'll just do that really quick off camera, and then we're gonna go over to my bench and I'll show you how I prep the valve covers. Okay, we're over on the bench and I have the valve cover all cleaned up. We're not going for show quality here because this is a patina truck and we want to leave it all original. But what you're essentially going to do is just clean it out with brake clean, Scotch-Brite pad, and the biggest thing is you want this surface to be completely clean and bare shiny metal all the way around. Another thing you want to check for is that these are not crushed. If they are crushed upward, then what you want to do is just take a little dolly and a hammer, and you want to hammer them back so they're flat. Okay, if they're mushroomed, it's because someone over torqued them at some point. The gasket that I would recommend is a cork Felpro in all instances. The rubber ones always seem to slide off, and they just don't work for me. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to be using the Right Stuff gasket sealer, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a bead of gasket all the way around, and then we'll pop the gasket on and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so all I've done here is I've just run a little bead of Right Stuff gasket maker all the way around. Not a crazy big bead, just a nice small bead that'll aid the gasket in sealing on the valve cover side only. Only doing the valve cover side, that's it. So now I'm squeezing the gasket into place, making sure it gets lined up. Putting the cork tabs pushed into their alignment holes. I'm going to get it all set up first, all the way around. Again, this isn't rocket science, it's pretty straightforward stuff here, but you can definitely do this wrong and mess up your day pretty bad. Okay, that's all in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around, and I'm just going to give it a little schmoosh action. So I know it's all set up. There are two types of fasteners, only two types of fasteners I would use when doing this job. Either reuse the factory bolts / studs, which is exactly what we're going to do in this case, or go with ARPs. One or the other. I would not even waste your money on Chinese stuff because it's not worth it. It'll break. I would also recommend that you use the factory valve covers. Do not go with aftermarkets of any brand unless there's something that's really high quality. I would definitely not do it. Okay, there's no rush here because this actually takes a while to set up anyway. And we are going to let this sit overnight as well. I'll give it a 24-hour cure period. Now, on the engine side, what I'm putting in here is high-tack gasket sealant. You can either put this right on the gasket or you can put it right on the engine. It depends on what you're doing. When I'm doing like a front cover on a modified, I usually put it right on the engine and put the gasket on and then put it on the other side. In this instance, I'm just going to be putting it right on the gasket. Just like so. This just gives it a nice tacky sealant to the engine. And that's pretty much it. If you put it on the engine side, you're going to get the purple stuff all over your engine. And if you have a nice painted block, you'll be disappointed in how it turns out. So I'm not saying that this is an absolute, that you have to put this on, but it's a nice little insurance policy because I hate doing this job twice. That is for sure. So before I put this on, I am just going to let it tack up a little bit. You don't actually want this to be wet when you put it on the engine. And there's no rush with the Right Stuff gasket sealant. If I was doing ARP studs at this point, I would already have the ARP studs in, so I could go right to putting the valve cover on when I'm ready. But like I said, we'll be reusing factory hardware in this instance. So at this point, we're ready to go back over to the engine and put this on once it tacks up a little bit. Okay, again, I've cleaned the surface of the valve cover portion of the block. So now I'm ready to put the valve cover on. Obviously, you want to definitely make sure that everything is completely free of grease and of any schmutz of any kind, old pieces of cork. So we want to get this in there nice and straight without getting it stuck on anything. Making sure your gasket doesn't fall off as we go here. Alright, looks like my holes are aligned. So I'm just going to gently hold it in place. As I get a couple in here. I actually really like this setup here with the plug wires. They just go right on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the rest of the bolts in, and then I'm going to show you the torquing procedure, which is critical to this job. Okay, so now we're tightening down the valve covers. This part is absolutely critical. You do not want to over tighten these. If you over tighten them, you will mushroom the valve covers and they will leak, and you will have a terrible, awful day. So the way I'm doing it is I'm just doing it by hand. And I'm just taking it from the middle to the outside, and I'm only going as tight as I feel comfortable, and it's really just a feel thing here. I think the spec calls for 15 foot-pounds, but even then, that almost feels like too much to me. So I'm just going by feel here, and you can see I'm really just barely using the ratchet to give myself any mechanical advantage as I tighten it down.
That's really all there is to it.
I do not want to go any tighter than that on any of these. Okay. I think any tighter than that would be a mistake at this point. All right. So that feels pretty good to me. So now what's going to happen is, and you can see the right stuff just barely seeping out. I did not go crazy with it. You just want a little bit. So now what you want to do is you want to wait a full 24 hours, let it cure, and then you should be good to go. This is definitely what I've found to be the best way to do these valve covers. If you do have a little bit of a leak after you start it up for the first time, try and put a little bit more torque on the bolts, not too much. And if you torque them more and it starts to leak even worse, well, then you over torqued them, you got to take them off and do it all over again. That is it for this episode of Dentside Depot. I'm going to get the other valve cover on. If you like this content, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.